අද්විතීය 200 Mbps ස්පීඩ් එකකින් ශ්‍රී ලංකාවේ වේගවත්ම සහ පුළුල්තම හෝම් බ්‍රෝඩ්බෑන්ඩ් සම්බන්ධතාවය වන SLT මොබිටෙල් දේශීය ෆයිබර් බලවේගය ඔබත් අදම අත්විඳින්න.
හරිම සුළුයි.
On First at 9, this Wednesday, the 13th of September 2023. SLDB DDO done. Sri Lanka announces completion of Sri Lanka Development Bonds restructuring, with an IMF review team expected in Colombo tomorrow to commence first review of EFF arrangement. SOE listings, separate listing board and new listing rules for state-owned enterprises. Capital Market Regulator gives its approval. Dynamic pricing. Power Ministry focuses on the introduction of a daily automated fuel pricing mechanism. Accountability mechanism. Sri Lanka slams the OHCHR's written update pertaining to the Easter Sunday attacks probes. Anti-terrorism. New anti-terrorism bill will be gazetted soon, reveals the foreign minister.
ඔබේ විශ්වාසය දෙනු සෙන්සුරයින් දැන් ළඟමැති ෆාමසියෙන් ලබාගත හැක.
Rhino Cement Roofing Sheets. හොඳම මිලට කල් පවතින වහරයක්.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9 with Ndivadi Amuata. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
And a warm welcome. You're joining us on your primetime English newscast. An International Monetary Fund team expected in Colombo tomorrow is to engage in talks with Sri Lankan officials for the first review of the ongoing IMF Extended Fund Facility arrangement approved in March earlier this year. The visit is expected to last until the 27th of September. The successful completion of the progress review will help Sri Lanka unlock the second tranche of the IMF EFF program, as per the bailout, amounting to approximately $330 million.
The team from the International Monetary Fund is expected to visit Sri Lanka tomorrow for a progress review meeting of the program, which Sri Lanka is currently engaging with the IMF in, following the economic crisis last year. The team of IMF officials are expected to stay in Sri Lanka for 2 weeks, ending the 27th of September. On the 20th of March this year, the executive board of the IMF approved a $2.9 billion bailout package for Sri Lanka. The program is a 48-month extended arrangement under the Extended Fund Facility of the IMF, and the $2.9 billion bailout is to be disbursed to Sri Lanka in 8 tranches. The first tranche of approximately $330 million was disbursed to the Ministry of Finance on the 22nd of March, 2 days after the approval of the bailout package. In order to receive the second tranche, which amounts to $330 million, Sri Lanka needs to successfully complete the upcoming progress review. Meanwhile, State Minister of Finance Ranjit Siambalapitiya said that the government is following a plan to structure the loan repayment process. He, however, warned that the country is not out of the woods yet and still needs time to fully recover from the economic crisis.
මතුමා දැන් රාජ්‍යයකට දෙසැම්බර් මාසෙන් පස්සේ ණය ගෙවන්න ඕන රටේ ගත්ත ණය. ඒ කියන්නේ ණය ප්‍රශස්තකරණය ප්‍රතිහෝගතකරණය කියන්නේ මොකක්ද? නොගෙව ඉන්න නෙවෙයි. අපිට ගෙවන්න පුළුවන් ගානට ඒව ගලපා ගන්න එක. පොලි අඩු කරන්න වෙන්න පුළුවන්. එහෙම නැත්නම් ණය ගෙවීම ආරම්භ කරන කාලය කල්දමා ගැනීම වෙන්න පුළුවන්. ණය ගෙවීමේ කාලය දික් කර ගැනීම වෙන්න පුළුවන්. සමහර ණය කපා හැරීම වෙන්න පුළුවන්. ඒකට තමයි මෙතෙක්කල් මේ වෙහෙසෙන්නේ. අපි ඊටාම හොඳ සැලසුමක්. විශේෂයෙන් ජාත්‍යන්තර මූල්‍ය අරමුදල් සමග එකතු වෙලා හොඳ සැලසුමක් ඇතුව අපිට ගවන්න පුළුවන් ගානකට මේ ණය ටික පරිවර්තනය කරගන්න තමයි අපි කටයුතු. එමතුමා දැන් මේවා ගෙවන්න ඕන ඩොලර්ස් වලින්. මේ ඩොලර්ස් එතකොට අවශ්‍ය කරන ප්‍රමාණය තියෙනවද රටේ ඉතුරු දේවල් කරගන්නත් ණය ගෙවන්න? ඔව් අපි ක්‍රමානුකූලව මේ හැම දෙයක් ගැනම අවධානයෙන් සැලසුමක් තුන ඉස්සරහට යන්නේ. ඒ නිසා තමයි පහුගිය අවුරුද්දේ මේ කාල සීමාව වෙනකොට අපි සතුව තිබුණේ ඩොලර් බිලියන 1.8ක් විතර. දැන් අපි සතුව තියෙන ඩොලර් බිලියන 3.8ක් විතර. අසීරු කාලෙක මේ හැම දෙයක්ම කළමනාකරණය කරමින් තමයි රජය ඉස්සරහට යන්නේ. ඒ නිසා මේ අපි ප්‍රශ්නෙට උත්තර හොයන්නේ ඒකපාර්ශ්විකව නෙවෙයි. හැම පාර්ශ්වයකින්ම ප්‍රශ්නකට උත්තර හොයනකොට ඒකේ අට දිශාවෙම උත්තර හොයනවා. මේ හැම දෙයක් ගැනම රජය ගන්න ඕනේ.
එමෙතුමා දැන් ජනතාව රටේ ගොඩක් හිර වෙලා ඉන්නේ මේ ඔවුන්ගේ ජීවන වියදමවත් මේව කරගන්න බැරි තත්ත්වයක්. ඉතින් මේ ණය ගවන්න ගත්තම තවත් මිනිස්සු හිර වෙයි.
නෑ ඇත්තටම හැබැයි අපි එකක් කියන්න ඕනේ. අපි තාම අසීරු ආර්ථික ආഘാതයකට වැටුනේ. ඒකෙන් අපි ක්‍රමක්‍රමයෙන් දැන් ගොඩට යමින් යනවා. ක්‍රමක්‍රමයෙන් යනකොට කිසිදු කෙනෙකුට අපහසුාවක් නැතුව මේ ගමන යන්න බෑ. හැබැයි අපි ක්‍රමානුකූලව ඉස්සරහට වැඩි යම් කිසි දැනක අපි ඉන්නවා. අපි යථාර්ථයටපත් වෙන්න අපිට තා පොඩි කාලයක් යාවි.
State Minister of Finance Shehan Semasinghe says that eligible bondholders have been notified by the government of the acceptance of offers to the invitation to exchange treasury bonds for new bonds per the Treasury Bond Exchange Memorandum. The Treasury Bond Exchange Memorandum was introduced as part of the Domestic Debt Optimization Programme by the government under the debt restructuring plan of the International Monetary Fund. As such, out of the eligible 8.2 trillion rupees worth of bonds, exchange offers have been accepted for eligible bonds worth 3.2 trillion rupees.
Sri Lanka entered the domestic debt restructuring process earlier this year as a part of the International Monetary Fund's program for debt restructuring. The government announced today that the domestic debt optimization process related to Sri Lanka development bonds has been completed. State Minister of Finance Shehan Semasinghe said that bondholders have been notified regarding the acceptance of an invitation to exchange treasury bonds for new bonds. According to Minister Semasinghe, 3.2 trillion rupees worth of eligible bonds, or 37% of the eligible bonds, have been accepted for exchange out of the outstanding principal amount of eligible bonds of 8.7 trillion rupees. Further, the minister said that by end June 2023, the outstanding principal amount of eligible bonds held by superannuation funds for which valid offers have been accepted is 84%. The minister said that the success of the invitation to exchange will enable the government to reduce gross financing needs and achieve the gross financing needs target in the Extended Fund Facility Programme. Bonds which matured on September 1st, 2023 were excluded from the domestic debt optimization and paid in full due to the extension of the invitation to exchange. The determined settlement date for the invitation to exchange will be tomorrow, per Minister Semasinghe, and on the same day, new bonds will be issued to eligible holders in accordance with the accepted offer.
Sri Lanka's permanent representative to the United Nations office in Geneva, Himali Arunathilaka, objected to facts presented by the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights on the Easter Sunday attacks investigations via a written update on the human rights situation in Sri Lanka. Delivering her statement today at the 5th meeting of the 54th session of the UNHRC in Geneva, Arunathilaka said that the OHCHR had included incorrect and unsubstantiated information pertaining to the Easter Sunday attacks investigations from biased sources in their report.
The written update on Sri Lanka refers to investigations on the 2019 Easter Sunday terror attacks. Regrettably, the OHCHR has used incorrect and unsubstantiated information from biased sources in their analysis. Extensive and comprehensive investigations have been carried out on these attacks, including a Presidential Commission of Inquiry, and the report was submitted to Parliament. Sri Lanka's investigations were assisted by international agencies including the Australian Federal Police, the FBI and Interpol. As at April 2023, 79 have been indicted on these attacks-related matters. On 12 January 2023, the Supreme Court delivered its judgment on the fundamental rights petition filed against the President, IGP, Director of State Intelligence, Defence Secretary and Chief of National Intelligence at the time. Additionally, the government has decided to establish a parliamentary select committee to address recent concerns raised in the public domain, and the President has appointed a committee led by a retired Supreme Court judge to investigate the allegations. We appreciate the many positive comments made by countries during the idea on Sri Lanka, acknowledging the visible progress on the ground.
Minister of Foreign Affairs, the President's Counsel Ali Sabri, announced that the new anti-terrorism bill will be gazetted within the next 2 weeks. The gazette that was drafted follows a cabinet decision to redraft the bill by introducing revisions based on views of relevant stakeholders. Addressing a media briefing today, the Foreign Minister said that if the new bill is challenged in the Supreme Court, the government is committed to adopting changes recommended by the Supreme Court.
The new law will have several important features. The most important thing is the old law, you could keep somebody under detention for a long period of time until the amendment which was last year, in terms of which for 1 year without the judicial intervention. Under the new law, a maximum period of 60 days will be given. After the 60 days, if you want to detain somebody, a magistrate could sanction. The judicial power had been given to the people. Secondly, whoever who had been detained, even that within 60 days can go to the Supreme Court or the Court of Appeal and challenge that it is not lawful. So that power had been specifically granted. Earlier it was there without specific nature. Thirdly, within 48 hours of detention, it should be produced before a magistrate. Fourthly, any extension before 6 months should be based on a magistrate order. Thereafter, access had been given to the attorneys at law of the detainees to talk to them and find out what is happening. Then the most important thing is no confession is admissible which had been made to a police officer. Only confession which is given to a magistrate in terms of the normal law will be admissible against the accused. Then of course we also know within 48 hours must be produced before the magistrate. Access to lawyers only can be detained in places of detention which is identified, not in undisclosed places. So therefore this is a progressive litigation. This has been done after listening to so many concerns by the civil society, both international and local, and our trade union. As a government which listens to the people, we have taken that into consideration and amended it. So I'm sure this will be gazetted within this week or the next week, the latest. Most of your concerns, such as the earlier one, the definition which some thought will include trade unions and others, have been taken away, and we have given a narrow down specific restriction unless it is directly connected to that definition, which is violence and connected to violence, that cannot be used in this. So all these things have been brought into this. So once it is gazetted, you will have access to this, and thereafter anybody who is interested can challenge this in Supreme Court. We are willing to listen to the Supreme Court, and if further amendments are required in line with the Supreme Court determination, government is committed to do that.
President Ranil Wickremesinghe left the island today for Cuba, where he will be addressing the G77 plus China Leaders Summit. The president undertakes the visit following an invitation by his Cuban counterpart, where a discussion on the theme of the role of science and technology in current development will be discussed. The summit in Havana brings together like-minded leaders from 134 developing nations who are based on accomplishing development via cooperation. In a coincidental turn of events, the president met with the Chief Minister of West Bengal whilst in transit in Dubai. The meeting turned out to lead to mutual invitations for both leaders to visit other countries.
President Ranil Wickremesinghe left for Cuba this morning to attend the G77 plus China Leaders Summit to be held from the 14th to the 16th of September in Havana. President Wickremesinghe, who will be attending the summit following an official invitation from Cuban President Miguel Diaz-Canel, will also be addressing the summit themed Current Development Challenges, Role of Science, Technology and Innovation. Recognized by the United Nations, the G77 plus China Leaders Summit represents the largest intergovernmental coalition of 134 developing nations. It serves as a platform for southern countries to voice and promote their shared economic interests while enhancing their collaborative negotiating capabilities. According to the President's Media Division, this conference offers an opportunity to address contemporary challenges in the realms of science, technology and innovation, exploring cooperative solutions, particularly through inter-southern collaboration. The leaders of these nations are expected to adopt the Havana Declaration during the summit, which will outline guidelines for reforms and new approaches to enhance cooperation among southern countries in the fields of science, technology and innovation. Meanwhile, during his visit to Havana, President Wickremesinghe met Chief Minister of India's West Bengal, Mamata Banerjee, in Dubai whilst in transit. In an X message, the Chief Minister stated that she invited President Wickremesinghe to the Bengal Global Business Summit this year in Kolkata. She further stated that the Sri Lankan head of state extended a cordial invitation to her to visit Sri Lanka.
Sri Lanka Army personnel were deployed in several railway stations today to provide security and avoid the possibility of tensions as the train strike launched in a bid to achieve several key demands continued for a second day. The strike, which has hampered thousands of commuters, has reportedly cost a loss of about 20 million rupees as a result of the cancellation of 119 train services yesterday. Further, the Ministry of Transport and Highways, Bandula Gunawardena, announced the payment of 500,000 rupees to the family of the 20-year-old who lost his life falling off the roof of a moving train.
The train strike launched by the Sri Lanka Railways Locomotive Operating Engineers Union owing to several unfulfilled key demands continued for a second day today. The strike comes despite a special gazette notification issued under the directive of President Ranil Wickremesinghe to declare railway service as an essential service with immediate effect. Subsequently, army personnel were deployed to provide security to railway stations in a bid to avoid tense situations following a request made by the station masters and train drivers. Amidst the ongoing strike, the railway department had planned to operate 50 train services this morning. However, 13 of them were later cancelled, leaving the general public severely affected and hampered. The majority of the commuters were seen travelling on the footboard and roof of the trains due to severe compartment congestion.
පෙරේදා දවල් 12ට විතර වෘත්තීය සමිතිය කියන පිරිසක් ඇවිල්ලා මට කිව්වා අපිට වෘත්තීය සමිතිය පාලනය කරගන්න බෑ. කට්ටියක් කියනවා වර්ජනය කළ යුතුමයි. මම කිව්වා කුප්පිදු වැඩ කරන්න එපා. මොකද දැන් සති දෙකකට ඉස්සෙල්ලා මම පොරොන්දු වෙලා හරියටම සාකච්ඡාව අරන් දීලා තියෙද්දි වර්ජනය කරන්න හේතුවක් නැහැනේ. එපා මේක කරන්න කිව්වා. මම විතරක් නෙමෙයි ජීමාරුත් එපයි කිව්වා. ඒ කියන දේ අහන්න නැතුව බලවේග කට්ටලවල 84 දෙනෙක් තමයි මේ වර්ජනය දෙපොලක කරන්නේ. වෙන කාරණයක් නැහැ. ඒකනේ රටේ පවතින නීතිය. දැන් රටේ නීතිය අනුව ලංකාන්දුවේ දුම්රිය සේවය අත්‍යවශ්‍ය සේවාවක්. අත්‍යවශ්‍ය සේවාවට සියලු දෙනා වාර්තා කරන්නම ඕන. වාර්තා කළේ නැත්නම් ඔවුන්ගේ රැකියාව නැති වෙනවා. දුම්රියට ඕන නම් ඉන්දියාවෙන් ගෙනල්ලා දුවන්න පුළුවන්.
Meanwhile, the remains of the 20-year-old who died yesterday after falling off the roof of train due to train congestion was brought to his home in Morogoro in Gampaha this morning. Minister of Transport and Highways Dr. Bandula Gunawardena said that a sum of 500,000 rupees will be granted to the family of the deceased.
වෙච්ච දේ වුණා ජීවිතයක් ඉවර වුණා. ඒ සඳහාත් අපිට වන්දි ගෙවන්න අපි බැඳිලා නැහැ. දුම්රිය වැරද්දකින් වුණත් මනුස්ස ජීවිතයකට වන්දි ගෙවන්න පුළුවන්කම තියෙන රුපියල් 75,000යි. නිසා ලක්ෂ 5ක් කැබිනට් අනුමැතියට යටත්ව මේ කටයුතු කරගන්න යවන්න කියලා මම දැන් නියම කළා. ඒ අනුව අපි දුම්රිය දෙපාර්තමේන්තුවෙන් ලක්ෂ 5ක් අපි කරුණාසහගත ගෙවීමක් විදියට ඒ දරුවගේ පවුලට ගෙවනවා. ඒක ඒ දරුවගේ ජීවිතේ වටිනාකම තක්සේරු කරලා නෙමෙයි.
As such, the amount was dispersed by officials of the railway department to the family of the deceased. In related news, owing to the cancellation of 119 train services yesterday, the railway department has incurred a loss of 20 million rupees. In a bid to realise their demands, the trade unions held a discussion with Prime Minister Dinesh Gunawardena this afternoon at the Prime Minister's office. Meanwhile, today was capped off with large crowds of commuters at the Colombo Fort and Maradana railway stations this afternoon as a result of the disrupted train services.
Sri Lanka's Minister of Power and Energy, Kanchana Wijesekara, said that discussions were held with Ceylon Petroleum Corporation officials and dealers on the topic of automated fuel dispensation while implementing a daily automated price revising system from next year. Taking to X, Minister Wijesekara confirmed that the meeting took place at the Ministry of Power and Energy today. Discussions regarding issues related to dealer margins, distribution of fuel, future developments and new fuel stations to be established took place at the meeting. The minister said that during the meeting, dealers were briefed on the plans of the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation to automate all fuel dispensation and stock-taking facilities with new equipment. He further added that plans to implement a daily automated price revising system for fuel dispensing will be adopted from next year in response to the current monthly price revision system that has been in place since 2022. And we'll return with your business news on the other side of this break. Do stay with us.
ගොඩමඩ පෙරලි කරන බලපුළුවන් කාරයා මහින්ද්‍රා යුවෝ ඩීමෝ වෙතින්. වැඩම ගොඩයි ගොඩම තමයි ස්වරාජ් ට්‍රැක්ටර් ඩීමෝ වෙතින්.
Welcome back to the news. We take you to your business segment now. Capital Markets Regulator, the Securities and Exchange Commission of Sri Lanka, approved the creation of a separate listing board and new listing rules to facilitate the entry of state-owned enterprises to the capital market. This is in response to the government's policy to expedite reforms in state-owned enterprises. The rules have been developed under the guidance and direction of the Securities and Exchange Commission to the Colombo Stock Exchange and includes consultations with and inputs by the Securities and Exchange Commission, restructuring unit of the government and the Auditor General. The new transitionary board, when launched, will facilitate those SOEs seeking to list on the Colombo Stock Exchange on a set of new rules which are designed to enable progressive transition from the initial listing board to the main board or the Dirisavi board. The rules applicable to the new board include a state capital of not less than 250 million rupees. It further requires revenues, net asset and market capitalization tests, a minimum 3 years operating history, a time-bound requirements for financial reporting and a minimum 10% public float with a 300 public shareholder requirement. The corporate governance requirements under these rules will be the same as those applicable to the main board and the Dirisavi board. The Ceylon Chamber of Commerce and the Joint Apparel Association Forum welcomed the government's decision to defer the removal of the SVAT scheme. The government took a decision to amend the existing Value-Added Tax Act in June of this year. The decision included rationalization of value-added tax exemptions and the abolition of the simplified value-added tax system. Both the Chambers of Commerce and the Joint Apparel Association said that the decision by the government will also help regulators respond with a strong tax repaying mechanism while allowing the business community to have a smooth transition to a new system.
In a statement issued today, the Ceylon Chambers of Commerce, appreciating the government's decision to postpone the repeal of the SVAT scheme, said that the previous bill raised several concerns among various sectors, including exporters registered under the current SVAT system. Prior to this, both chambers requesting the government to rethink the abolishing of SVAT said that the decision is being made at a critical time when Sri Lanka has seen a significant dip in exports of over 10% in 2023, along with a 19% decrease in apparel exports with expectations for weak external demand to continue. The existing SVAT system was implemented in 2011 to address inefficiencies and delays in the VAT refund process managed by the Inland Revenue Department. Prior to SVAT, many exporters were cash-strapped due to delayed VAT refunds, some for up to 5 or 6 years. The Chamber said that this postponement allows businesses and individuals, particularly exporters, to have ample time to adjust operations to adapt to the impending changes. It also affords the government the necessary space to establish a strong tax repayment mechanism, and these efforts would ensure a smoother transition and mitigate the risk of financial instability. Meanwhile, the Joint Apparel Association Forum in a statement also appreciated the government's decision, saying that this decision reflects the dedicated efforts of various stakeholders to protect the apparel industry of the country. The JAAF said that the decision comes at a critical time for apparel exporters who have been grappling with declining exports and therefore risk of cash flow disruption if SVAT was removed without a viable refund system in place. Ensuring support of a strong tax repayment mechanism to take place before proceeding with the removal of SVAT, the JAAF said that the decision by the government offers a lifeline to the sector, ensuring a smoother transition towards a revamped tax framework. The Cabinet of Ministers granted approval for a proposal by the President yesterday to bring in amendments to change the date to implement the revised Value Added Tax Act till 2025 and the repeal of the simplified value added tax gradually until a new system is in place, following discussions held with the business community in the country. The proposal comes after discussions were held between the President and relevant stakeholders with special attention drawn to the drastic finance flow issues that may erupt especially to exporters who have been registered under the system at present.
The broad market rebounded positively with an intraday gain of 91 points as uncertainties surrounding domestic debt optimization came to a close. The Colombo Stock Exchange opened on an upward trend and maintained its positive sentiment to close trading at 11,439 points. The all-share price index closed in green as a result of price gains in counters such as Melster Corp, Selinco Insurance and Commercial Bank. Similar behavior was witnessed in the S&P SL20. A notable buying spree on Melster Corp PLC was witnessed among retailers and high net worth investors through off-board transactions given the attractive valuations on this share. Additionally, active collection on banking counters was witnessed as the weighted average yields trimmed down at the weekly Treasury bill auction after 3 weeks. In the midst of active participation, turnover significantly improved by 95% to 1.8 billion rupees compared to the previous session and was largely backed by off-board transactions of Melster Corp, H&B and RIL Property. The food, beverage and tobacco sector and the capital goods and banking sectors jointly contributed 70% to the overall turnover. Foreign participation in market activity remained at subdued levels, with the foreigners closing as net sellers. Meanwhile, market experts confirm with the completion of the exchange of Sri Lanka development bonds under the domestic debt restructuring program that the country can now progress forward to the external debt restructuring process. Market expert Dishan Jonas joins us now with a few thoughts on the economic situation of the country in our Economic Outlook segment.
In major economic news this week, we saw Brent crude oil prices globally crossing $90 a barrel this week, up from about $80 a barrel the previous few weeks, as a result of OPEC deciding to cut down on production. Major investment banks expect Brent crude oil prices to cross $100 in the coming months, going into a winter season and with the OPEC cutting down on production. As a result, we saw European central banks still holding a tightening monetary policy stance and wanting to increase their policy rates in the next couple of months, as inflation is yet to reduce, and also with oil prices keeping higher, they are looking at keeping interest rates on the high single digits for the foreseeable future. From a global perspective, we also saw the Chinese yuan depreciate to one of its lowest points since 2007, as their exports tumbled during the first 7 months of 2023. From a local perspective, from an interest rate perspective, we saw the Treasury bill rates coming down today, where the 3-month Treasury bill rates fell by roughly about 30 basis points, while the 1-year Treasury bills fell by roughly about 23 basis points. The total amount raised from Treasury bills during the week was about 160 billion rupees, and this was on the back of 90 billion rupees raised through a Treasury bond auction yesterday. The good news was that the domestic debt exchange program is almost concluded, with roughly about 84% of the superannuation fund taking the domestic debt exchange, which overall accounts for about 37% of the bonds outstanding, which will mean that the conclusion of the domestic exchange will mean that now Sri Lanka can move on to the external debt exchange program, which is expected to be completed within the next couple of months. The IMF review is in progress, and Sri Lanka is waiting results, and markets are anticipating the results of the second IMF review to come up in the next couple of weeks. From an exchange rate perspective, the major news was that the dollar reserves of Sri Lanka fell by roughly about $150 million to $3.5 billion, mainly as a result of the Sri Lankan Central Bank settling roughly about $200 million of their swap with the Bangladesh Central Bank during the last 2 weeks of August. Also, the good news is that worker remittances, which was holding low, came close to about $499 million in the month of August, which is a positive sign towards an improving current account position in the coming months. We see positive upturn in the tourist arrivals, and we reflect in a positive current account balance towards the last quarter of 2023. We are confident that Sri Lanka will be able to build its reserve position to $4.4 billion, which is the IMF target, from about $3.5 billion of reserves which they are holding at the moment.
Let's now take a look at how the rupee exchange rates performed today. And in some news, just in, the Sri Lanka Railways Locomotive Engineers Union, Operating Engineers Union, says their strike has been called off. And let me repeat it, the Sri Lanka Railways Locomotive Operating Engineers Union says their strike has been called off. Welcome back. We take you to your corporate news segment. Sri Lanka Loves Gas and Lanka IOC have signed a partnership and expect to merge services providing extended service hours available 365 days a year with Loves Gas products readily accessible at all Lanka IOC stations. Meanwhile, Sampath Bank, in collaboration with Board of Investments, published a guideline for investors and BOI companies. With that, let's take a look at our corporate affairs news segment today.
Sri Lanka's energy solutions providers Loves Gas plc and Lanka IOC have forged a strategic partnership to drive innovation, enhance operational efficiency and elevate customer service standards to the local LP gas customer base. The Loves Gas and Lanka IOC partnership envisions a future where extended service hours, available 365 days a year, become the norm, with Loves Gas products readily accessible at all Lanka IOC stations. Sampath Bank plc, in collaboration with the Board of Investments of Sri Lanka and the Ministry of Investment Promotions, unveiled a comprehensive banking guide titled Sri Lanka Banking Guide for Investors and BOI Companies. The banking guide serves as a strategic initiative to support the nation's drive to attract foreign direct investments. It further offers comprehensive banking insights tailored for investors and BOI companies, addressing key areas such as investment accounts, operational banking, borrowing solutions, and related financial services. Sri Lanka Telecom Digital Services Private Limited, the emerging marketing and digital engagement solutions arm of Sri Lanka Telecom plc, has announced the launch of its latest offering, the online directory automobile.lk. This digital platform will be providing a comprehensive hub for all things automobile related, catering to every conceivable auto-related requirement, from providing up-to-date information and insights on vehicles to showcasing a comprehensive spectrum of auto services and industry suppliers, as well as facilitating vehicle transactions.
And that's all the news for tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Indivariya Muatta. Have a pleasant evening. Good night.